Mindsetters, welcome to your second session for the day, your second live session because we've been having more revision and stuff. Winter school it is. I am Looney and with me is Yugan. Yugan, how are you doing?
Good and yourself, Looney. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. What are we doing?
Well, we're looking at evolution today.
Okay.
And the grade 12s are preparing for their prelims. This is one of the topics that they often have lots of questions. So we're hoping that I'm going to help them today and we get lots of questions from them.
Okay, cool. As you heard at grade 12s, we're going through evolution. But before I say anything else, as Mindset, we'd like to send our thoughts and prayers to Tatu Mandela and his family, his entire family. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to you. We wish nothing but the best for your health and we're crossing our fingers. We hope everything goes well and we're sending our love to you. So Mindsetters, we do have a Facebook page where you can connect with us, ask questions as you can said. It's facebook.com/learnextra. Our Twitter page is @learnextra. We have an exciting thing going on. We have a competition called Stop the Clock. So basically what happens is that you go onto mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock and you do the following. You enter your favorite number from 0 to 9 and then what happens is that Yugan will show you quickly. You see on our Facebook page, you can just show them there, our likes. You see our likes on our Facebook page. It's written 44,916. Just go up. There's the likes there.
Sure.
Yes. So you see the last number is 6, right? So we'll look at the last number. So the clock has stopped at 6 right now. So the lucky number right now going on is 6. But it will change as we go throughout the show. So all you need to do is go on to mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock, enter the entry form, fill it in, and fill in your number, your favorite number from 0 to 9. Remember, guys, if you're worried and the numbers keep going up and whatever, tell your friends to like the page and it will keep changing. So you will eventually get to 6 after some time. If you ask at least about like 10 friends to like the page, it will go back to 6. So just try it, guys. You stand a chance to win this awesome CD from Soul Candy. It's DJ Whiskey, guys. He's a DJ from Soul Candy. So Soul Candy and Mindset are running this competition. Stand a chance to win this. So throughout the show, we'll be checking the clock, and what's happening is that we'll check our Facebook likes, and then the last digit from our likes is the lucky number. So if you've got that number, you stand a chance to win this CD. And then what we have here is a CD case. Let me just show you guys. The very last live show that we'll have will give away the CD case. It's got great compartments to put all your CDs in. So guys, enter, urge your friends to like the page so that you get your favorite number. Okay, don't forget to download all the notes for your winter school on mindset.co.za/learn/extra/winter school. You can. I think I've said too much.
Whoa.
It's just time to take the show on the road.
Thanks, Looney. All I heard was // and that means let's go forward. Okay, so cool, guys. Awesome competition. And Looney asked me before we got to the start of the show what was my favorite number, and I said 6. So I'm just hoping that, you guys like the page as much. There are lots of CDs up for grabs, guys. And let's see. Ask your friends to like the page and we're going to get that number moving. Okay, so today we're speaking about evolution. And it's part of paper 1. And guys, you're preparing for your prelims. You're using the winter school that Mindset's running to actually prepare and look at what you've done this year. And the best way to do that is to look at past year papers. Remember one thing, that the examiner is not going to ask you an exact same question that you've used. But these questions that we will discuss today and the questions that you may revise are very important, because essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at concepts, and you're going to be looking at concepts that are being tested by being asked various questions. And that's what we're essentially going to look at today. So we're going to look at evolution. And before I do start explaining to you evolution, I know lots of us have our belief systems about evolution. And as a life science learner, it's very important for you to understand evolution. Now, we're not expecting you to believe evolution or to change your belief systems, but it's important for you as a life science learner to understand how evolution has taken place as a possible explanation for the existence of life on Earth. We're not saying that you have to accept it. What we're saying is you have to understand it and be able to answer questions as a life science learner in grade 12. So without further ado, we're going to start with our first question, guys. And this has been taken out from the FEB exams that was written in 2012. And these are the questions that appear in the multiple choice. And this is very important in terms of when you prepare on any topic. I would prepare the topic first, and then I will look at a few papers. So probably I'll have last year's final exam paper 1, I'll have the March exam papers, I'll have the previous exam papers. I will look at those 3 papers, and I'll look at the topics that are relevant to me. So for evolution, I'll prepare on evolution, then I'll take these 3 papers, and then I'll try and answer the questions that are relevant to the topic that I've studied. And essentially that's what we're doing today. We're looking at evolution, and we've taken out some questions from the February 2012 exams, as well as from February 2013, and we've put this as a revision lesson for you on evolution. So we're hoping that you have lots of questions to ask. Looney's going to stop me and tell me, well guys, these are the questions that the guys have posted, and can we answer them? And I'm hoping that you have lots of questions so that I can engage with you and help you understand some of the concepts that you might be having problems understanding. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Remember that we've got to read the question properly first. Use a highlighter, highlight keywords. Okay, so various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the correct answer and write only the letter next to the question number. So you'll find that you either have, in your exam paper, you'll have a grid or a block in which you write down your answers. Remember that you've got to follow the instructions, and the instructions clearly say use only the letter. So don't rewrite the entire answer out. Okay, so the first question, the wings of a butterfly. So we talk of the wings of a butterfly and the wings of a bird are examples of. So when you look at a question like this, we look at the options. A, homologous structures. B, vestigial structures. C, analogous structures. And D, common ancestry. Now if we look at a combination of these options, they're quite similar in terms of the concepts, but we need to break down each of these concepts before we try and answer this question. In evolution, we look at structures, and we use structures to be able to make comparisons between relatedness and unrelatedness. The word homologous refers to structures that are similar, or parts that are similar in structure but different in function. So if you think about homologous structures, if we compare the wings of a bird, the wings of a bat, if we talk about the limbs, the 4 limbs of horses, dogs, they essentially are similar in structure, but they're very different in function. And such parts are called homologous structures. Okay. The opposite of homologous structures, if we were to call that, would be analogous structures. These are structures that are similar in function, or parts that are similar in function, but unrelated in structure. So the wings of a bird, the wings of a butterfly. Insects don't have bones. Birds have a structure which is made up of bones. So very unrelated structures, but they have a similar function, and we call those structures analogous structures. So structures that have been adapted to suit an environment would be analogous structures. They have an uncommon origin, so they're not related, but yet they have a similar function. And obviously vestigial structures, guys, would be structures that have lost their function or their use over long periods of time. And this is also an indication of change, where organisms have adapted to their conditions but have lost the use of certain structures. So if we think about the appendix, the wisdom teeth, the hair in human body, these are vestigial structures which we've lost function, use of. And common ancestry refers to a term where organisms share a common ancestor from which they've evolved. So if we were to look at this, the wings of a butterfly and the wings of a bird are examples of structures that have similar function but different in structure. So the answer for that would be analogous structures. So this would be the correct answer. Okay, it's very important, guys, to understand the difference between analogous and homologous structures. Let's move on to the next question. 1.1.2. Which one of the following is an acceptable explanation based on Darwin's theory of evolution? Now, before I read these options, remember that in terms of the theories of evolution, there have been 2 significant theories that we discussed in grade 12. One was Darwin's theory, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, and the other of natural selection, and the other was proposed by Lamarck, and Lamarck's theory was the theory of use and disuse. And it's very important to unpack these 2 definitions or these 2 theories before we actually start to answer these questions. And often you get the question asked either in a multiple choice, or you could be asked to explain Darwin's theory of evolution. Essentially what Darwin said was, he said 3 things, and I often tell my learners to remember it simply. He said that the environment constantly changes. He also said that organisms randomly change, and those the random changes are driven by mutations. Today we know that they're mutations. When Darwin proposed this theory, he could not use the word mutations or genes because he hadn't any clue of mutations or genes. But he did mention that organisms constantly change, and that was random. It wasn't significantly in terms of to adapt to an environment. And what the third thing he mentioned was that when these changes happen, and if the change gives the organism an advantage to the environment at that time, these organisms survive, and they're the fittest ones. The organisms that haven't had a change do not survive, and they eventually die out. And that is what Darwin said. Lamarck, on the other hand, spoke about organisms. He spoke about the environment changing, and he said that organisms adapt to suit the environment, which is sort of with intent. And that unfortunately does not happen. Organisms do not adapt to the environment. Mutations randomly happen, and if they have an adaptation that allows them to survive, then that's an advantage to them. So Lamarck spoke about the theory of use and disuse. The more you use something, the better it became. Does make sense, guys, but what he meant was that the things that you do more often would be the things that you would pass on to your next generation. And he referred to that as acquired characteristics were passed on, whereas Charles Darwin spoke about inherited characteristics being passed on. Inherited would be through genes being passed on to the next generation, whereas Lamarck spoke about things that you acquire in your life. So if you go in for a tan, that your kids will be born with the tan. If you go in for cosmetic surgery, your kids will be born with that change. Unfortunately, that does not happen. We know today that change is driven by genes. So if something has to be passed on, it has to be passed on genetically. Okay, so let's look at what these four options are. So humans evolved from apes, and if you do get somebody talking about that, you can dismiss that immediately. That is that's a misconception. We have not evolved from apes, guys. We share a common ancestor from which apes have evolved, from which humans have evolved. So if somebody calls you a monkey, tell them that we're unrelated and we don't evolve on that line. We have separate ancestor. We have a common ancestor from which we've evolved. A mother who had her appendix removed will give birth to children without appendix. And this is simply what Lamarck said. Lamarck said that things that happen to you, cosmetic surgery. So if you decide now to put on muscle, your kids are not going to be born with muscle. If you decide to change your hairstyle, the kids are not going to be born with that hairstyle. So that's exactly what Lamarck said. And unfortunately, that's not what Charles Darwin said. Okay, if we go and read the third one. An increasing number of TB causing bacteria are resistant to antibiotics because those that are resistant are able to survive and reproduce. And this is a correct answer. And I'll talk about this in a little while in terms of evidence of evolution today. The fourth one is giraffes had long necks because a previous generation stretched their necks to reach the leaves in tall trees. Now this is what Lamarck spoke about. This was a quiet characteristic. The more you did something, the better it became. So it simply means that if you guys are used to texting, that your thumbs are going to become longer and the next generation would have longer thumbs. I don't think that's possible. If a mutation happens and somebody has a long thumb, and that could be possible.
No,
really. Looney's laughing, thinking that it sounds funny. But at that time, when Darwin and Lamarck had made their theories put forward, people also laughed at Darwin because they challenged him in terms of, because there was a Christian belief system that God had created life in that, and hence we don't even get into that argument at the moment. So with lots of evidence, with genetics being proved, with Mendel's equations and the fact that we know that genes exist, we can use that evidence to support Darwin's theory. I'm just going to go back to evidence of evolution in current day. So TB has 3 different strains of TB. So that has arisen because of TB becoming resistant to the antibiotic. We've had drug-resistant TB, and we've got extreme drug-resistant TB. Now these are 3 different strains of the TB bacteria, and that is because TB, the bacteria, has mutated, and some of them have become resistant. And this resistance has allowed them to become a new species of the TB bacteria. And this is what we can use as evidence to support evolution presently. So we're going to move on to the next question. Below is a list of fossils discovered in South Africa. We have lots of fossils found in South Africa, Sterkfontein Caves, in the cradle of humankind. We've got Mispless, we've got Taung Chao, Littlefoot, and Karabo. Karabo is also known as the Australopithecus sediba, which was recently found. Okay, now that's the common name. Which of these fossils, so we need to identify which of these are classified in the genus Australopithecus. Now, when we look at evolution, there are two genera that we study. We look at Homo and we look at Australopithecus. So, if you look at the term Australopithecus, Australopithecus refers to the genus, and often we represent it as A. sediba or H. sapien. The H refers to Homo, which is a separate genus, and the A, which represents Australopithecus, represents another genus. So we're looking at a genus, Australopithecus. And if we look at Mispless again, guys, also belong to Australopithecus, Taung Australopithecus, Littlefoot, and Karabo all belong to the genus Australopithecus. So if we look at the combinations, 1, 2, 3, 4 would be B. So all of the above fossils belong to the genus Australopithecus. Let's look at the next question. This question has been adapted from the February exams 2012, and this was question 1.3. I'm going to briefly read this question out, and then before we go for a break, we're going to go for a break and we're going to get back. But if you look at this question, guys, it's unlike the normal matching the columns. Here you've got, and you've got to be careful about the type of question this is. It might appear very simple, but there's 4 possible answers for any one of these. And the 4 possible answers are, when you read this, it says, indicate whether each of the statements in column A or column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, and none. So you have 4 possible answers, unlike true and false or A and B. Here you've got A only, B only, A and B, or none. So we've got to read them very quickly. And you've got to write by writing A only, B only, both A and B, or none. And you've got to be very clear about what you write in terms of the answer. And this is often a 2-mark question for each point. So you've got to examine the options that are given to you in column 2 and see if they apply, whether both apply, none apply, or one applies only. And then select the relevant answer and write that down. Be cautious about writing the most obvious, because often we read paleontology, yes, we write that down, but look at the other option. It's possible that both the answers are correct. It's possible that none are correct. So we're going to go for a little break. I'm going to allow you to stretch a bit. When we get back, we're going to look at these types of questions, and we're going to continue.
All right, guys, we are going to take a very short break. After the break, I'll tell you about a new show that's playing tonight, guys, called Connections, but we will take a short break, so do stay tuned. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that very short break. I hope you guys are taking in what you guys is teaching you. You guys are writing down everything that she's teaching you, as well as going on to mindset.co.za/learn/extra/winter school to get all the notes that he is using. But for now, let's check our likes. So right now we're on 44,928. Our lucky number there is 8. So make sure, guys, you enter, hey, 8 is the number now, but it might change during the show. We don't know when the clock is going to stop, so keep entering, guys, until we tell you that the clock has stopped and this is the number. So right now the number is 8. So if you didn't enter 8, push all your friends to like it, guys, until it gets to your favorite number, if the number keeps on changing. But make sure you enter on mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock. You stand a chance to win this amazing CD from Soul Candy. The DJ is DJ Whiskey. So this is what you get to win. Make sure, guys, 8 is the number right now, but we don't know if it will change or not throughout the show, so make sure you keep on entering. Don't think now because you entered in the past show your entry is still valid. keep entering, guys, to stand yourself a chance to win this amazing CD. So I told you before the break that we have a new show coming up, 7:15 tonight, guys. Make sure you watch it. It's called Connections. It is a teen talk show. Today's topic is date night, but we discuss so many other things that affect the youth, guys. So it's a great show. Unati, Luto, and Degano are your presenters. Make sure you like their page, guys. We're on over 40,000. So make sure you get them to over 40,000 as well. They're sitting at like 146 likes right now. Go on to facebook.com/Mindset Connections. Yes, I almost forgot it. Mindset Connections is the Facebook page, and then on Twitter, follow them at Connections319. Make sure, guys, you support them and you watch the show. It's an amazing show for all you guys out there. We don't talk about like learning stuff. You see Learn Extras for that. That is to deal with everything else that you go through, personal stuff that you go through, guys. So make sure you watch and just enjoy the show. You can.
Thanks, Lily.
Let's do this,
awesome show coming up. Okay, so let's look at. Before we went to the break, we were looking at the table. So the first column 1 tells you the study of the past and present distribution. The present distribution of individual species as evidence of evolution. We've got two terms, paleontology and biogeography. Paleontology, guys, is the study of fossils. Biogeography is the study of the distribution of organisms based on tectonic plate movement. So we've got two terms here, A and B. Let's go back to our column 1 and read what the description is. The study of past and present distribution of individual species as evidence of evolution, of evidence for evolution. If we look at this, guys, paleontology is the study of fossils. Biogeography is the study of the distribution of individual species along in the various continents. And that can also be used as evidence. So the answer here would be B only and not A, as A would be the study of fossils. We also have archaeology and we have anthropology. So you could be asked in terms of what is archaeology? Archaeology would be the study of artifacts, the paintings, etc., the tools, evidence of societies that existed in the past. That would be archaeology. If we look at anthropology or paleontology, paleontology would be looking at how societies, how civilization, how their culture existed, and that would be by looking at artifacts, looking at paintings, looking at tools that they made as well, to be able to understand what their society and how societies evolved. Okay, so let's look at, so that would be B only. Let's look at 2.2. The evidence used to support the out of Africa hypothesis by tracing maternal lineage. Now, maternal lineage basically refers to tracing inheritance using maternal ancestry. Now, when we look at maternal lineage, guys, what will immediately come to mind would be mitochondrial DNA. If we spoke about paternal lineage, then we'll obviously refer to Y chromosome. Okay, so let's look at what we have. Our options that are provided are Y chromosome, which we said was paternal lineage. So Y chromosome is used for paternal, and your mitochondrial DNA, which is DNA found in the mitochondria, is used as evidence for the out of Africa theory. So the answer here would be B only. Now, if we very quickly talk about mitochondrial DNA, guys, is DNA that is present in the mitochondria of the egg. When the egg and the sperm fertilize, the head of the sperm enters, but the body which contains the mitochondria of the sperm breaks away. So what you receive from the sperm is only the nucleus. If we compare that to the egg has the nucleus along with the mitochondria, and that mitochondria comes from the mother and it's passed on to the offspring, and then it is the daughters that pass that maternal mitochondrial DNA down to their offspring, and from their offspring it is the daughters that pass it on. So as males, you inherit your mitochondrial DNA, but you don't pass it on to the next generation. Females, however, pass it on to their offspring, and their female offsprings pass it on. By simply looking at the pattern of mitochondrial DNA inheritance, we can establish the maternal ancestry lineage, and that is what is used to support the out of Africa hypothesis testing. So Professor Himla Sudia from the Wits Origin Center basically heads the research in maternal ancestry. And a few years ago, I remember I was at a school where we did maternal DNA ancestry testing, and we did paternal, and that was used to work out ancestry in terms of where your earliest descendants had evolved from. Okay, so that's an interesting question as well. Let's look at 2.3. The first Homo sapiens species. The first Homo sapiens species to have migrated out of Africa was A, Homo habilis, or B, Homo sapiens. Now guys, this is one of the questions where you're going to get very easily caught out. Now if you think about you got to know your concepts there. The out of Africa theory speaks about the journey of humans out of Africa. Homo habilis and Homo sapiens did not leave Africa. It was the Neanderthals that left Africa and went into the Eastern Europe parts of the world. So none of these, so it's none. Homo habilis and Homo sapiens remained in Africa, and that from Homo sapiens gave rise to Homo sapiens sapiens, which are us at the moment, and from that branch you had Homo Neanderthals moving out into the Eastern European continent. Okay, if we look at 2.4, natural selection as an explanation of evolution. Okay, so let's see what the options are. Alfred Wallace and Charles Darwin. Now remember that Charles Darwin spoke about natural selection, so we definitely know that yes, he's correct. Alfred Wallace had simultaneously done some work. He had collected some evidence and he looked at similarities in structures. So he had written a little paper that Darwin got hold of. When Darwin saw this, he felt more comfortable about publishing his book on the origins of life. And so Alfred Wallace also spoke about natural selection, but he had not had collected enough of evidence to be able to present this to the National History Society during that time. So yes, both Alfred Wallace and Charles Darwin had proposed their theories of natural selection. So I would say here both A and B are correct. And remember guys, these answers are attached in the memo in the website. 2.5. Organisms have an inherent or internal drive to change. Now what this means is that you and I constantly want to change. Now I don't know if we all agree with this. If you think about change, do we constantly want to change, or is it randomly happening? And what Lamarck said was that organisms constantly want to change. It's inherent. Okay. If you compare that to Wallace, Wallace said that Alfred Wallace, we spoke about Alfred Wallace, he spoke about natural selection. And natural selection was that random changes occur and that organisms best suited to the environment survive. And if we look at this is an explanation for Lamarck's theory. So here it will be only A and not B. So it's A only. So we've looked at that, and we've looked at some key concepts. And often you get learners getting very confused with this. If you don't know your stuff, if you don't know your concepts, you're going to get easily confused with this, and you're more likely to say the wrong answer. So read the statement and look at whether both apply, whether one of them apply, or none of them apply. And that's very important for you to be able to make that call. Spend some time, guys, reading these options. Often we tend to rush through and answer these questions simply based on what we know. But read the questions, look at the options, and see if both are correct or neither are correct.
Egan?
Yep.
We have a quick question here, so sorry to disturb you. Refultium Tumbin is asking, why is evolution sometimes called descent with modification?
Descent with modification. Now that's an important, I'm just going to go back to the concept. Okay. So the question is, why is evolution called descent?
Yes.
Oh, I got stuck there. Descent with
modification.
Okay. Descent with modification simply means organisms descending from a common ancestor to adapt to various conditions. Now descent will refer to the word descending from. Modification would refer to organisms becoming adapted to various or different environments. So this is an example of descent with modification is referred to as evolution because it explains what we called divergent evolution. Divergent evolution. Divergent evolution simply means organisms that have had a common ancestor, common descent, now move out to adapt to different environments. And the evidence we use to support modification by descent or divergent evolution would be homologous structures. It's very important. Here we're seeing quite a packed concept. We're looking at what descent with modification is, and we brought in divergent evolution because we say that yes, it's often referred to as evolution because it represents divergence from a common ancestor, and a common ancestor would be organisms sharing a common ancestor that move out to occupy different environments, adapt to those conditions. And the evidence that we use to support the theory of modification by descent or divergent evolution would be homologous structures, where organisms share parts that are similar in structure but different in functions because they have adapted to different environments. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Are there more questions, Looney?
That was the only question so far.
That's quite an interesting question. You can see that it could be asked, could be a 4-mark question that could be asked. And I'm glad you guys are asking these questions. It means that you're understanding your concepts and you're able to relate and ask questions. It's very important that you ask these questions now. Let's move on to question 3. The diagram below represents a cladogram. A cladogram shows you a lineage, and with that, sort of at regular intervals, organisms or branches occurring. It's very different from a family tree where you see a common ancestor and you see branches from there. Here you're seeing along a line branches randomly appearing, and that is what a cladogram is. Okay, it's also called a phylogenetic tree showing primate evolution. Letters A to E indicate the characteristics which are shared. So they indicate characteristics which are shared by different species, they're not related, of primates which follow the letters. The point where various species of primates differ from each other is indicated by branching or splitting into the new species. So these branches represent variation that occurs or the rise of a new species. Okay, so let's look at some interesting questions. It's a very nice question to look at primate evolution and how organisms share a common ancestor but are not related to each other, and that's exactly what I meant. So the question that, are we related to apes? Have we evolved from apes? Clearly you can see that no. Humans, chimpanzees, gibbons, monkeys have all shared a common ancestor. If there was a line that said humans here, then somebody could argue that yes, you evolved from chimpanzees, but that's not the case. You can clearly see from this cladogram, guys, that we all as primates share a common ancestor. So we haven't evolved from them. Let's look at the question. So the diagram shows you a cladogram showing primate evolution. So A, there's some change that gave rise to the capuchin monkeys. Over a period of time, another random change led to the development of the vervet monkeys, and as we go along we see at point C and D there's a branch, and that branch gave rise to the rhesus monkeys and the gibbons. Over a period of time along this, chimpanzees evolved, and then from that humans. So let's look at some interesting questions that come up from this diagram. Which letter, and we just need to state the letter, represents a common, get to my pen, represents a common characteristic of all primates? So which is the single letter here that connects all of them together? Looney, what would be your guess?
Which letter?
Which would be the letter that connects all of these organisms together? Where does it start? Did it start with E? Or did it start all the way here?
A.
A, absolutely. So if you look at this line, somehow all of these organisms had started at point A. So the letter which represents the characteristics of all primates would be, I'm just going to do that, get to my arrow, The answer is A. So as I said, if you look at the arrow, guys, A, if you look at the cladogram, we can see that these organisms represent a common characteristic, and these are characteristics, so they all would have A. Okay, let's look at list 3 structural characteristics. So we've got to look at structural characteristics represented by the letter named in question 3.1. So what are the, okay, so we had a common ancestor, and that's a primate. So the primate's common ancestor, what are the characteristics that are represented by this? We've got a list 3, so let's look at 3 of them very quickly. Okay, I'm going to try and get, okay, so I've got the possible answers down here, and I'm going to refer to them in my explanation and obviously expand on them. So the development of an opposable thumb, guys. The opposable thumb simply means, if you look at our fingers, guys, we've got this thumb that points in the opposite direction. It points at right angles to the rest, and this allows us to do 2 things. It allows us to precision grip and to hold a pen, to be able to thread a needle, and it also allows us to power grip. And power grip would be something that organisms were able to hold onto trees, swing onto branches. So the ability of the thumb to become opposable allowed us to power grip and to precision grip. So it's a very important adaptation of primates. Bare fingertips with nails. If we look at our fingertips, guys, Looney's going to show you hers. She's got some nice manicured fingernails there, orange in color, guys. So you can clearly see them at night. That's part of evolution. Okay, so the bare fingertips with nails. So previously they would have had claws, and those, if you looked at them, they would have claws. But a characteristic of primates would be that their fingertips are covered with nails, and that is an advantage that allows them to be able to manipulate things, use their fingers with more dexterity. Long arms. If you look at the length of the arms, they were significantly longer, and this allowed them to freely rotate, to hold onto trees, and to be able to swing. So that freely rotating arms allowed more flexibility, more movement. We also see that in primates the eyes are in front, so they're not located to the back, they're quite front, right in the front, and that allowed them to be able to see better. It gave them a better angle as opposed to eyes that were deeply located in eye sockets. So the eyes moving front, the face becoming flat, allowed organisms that stood up right now to be able to have a better peripheral vision, better angle of vision. And as an organism stood up, guys, you know that if you stand and if you were staring straight ahead, you would be able to see in the periphery. And that adaptation allowed you to be able to react to different situations in the wild. And that was an advantage for them becoming successful. So we take these things for granted, but remember that the eyes give you an advantage to be able to respond to changes in the environment. Okay, stereoscopic vision. So stereoscopic vision means if we look, there's an overlapping of our vision, so we're not seeing only things on the left, we're not seeing only things on the right. We're able to process the left and the right hand side collectively together, and that is what we refer to as stereoscopic vision. So we're able to now see one image where both the eyes can process that and give us one picture, unlike certain animals where you've got different images. So if you look at a crab, they see differently. And those images then go towards the occipital lobe, and they process those as different images. Okay, eyes with cones. The ability to see color was a remarkable adaptation. This allowed them to be able to differentiate their predators, their prey, be able to see better at day, to be able to differentiate at night as well. So the development of cones was a significant characteristic of primates. Okay, large brain size compared to the body mass. So if you look at the cranium, guys, the cranium developed, it became bigger. And you know that the bigger the head is, it means that you've got lots of brain in there. The development of that larger brain size meant that the body, in relation to the body, meant that they were able to process, they were becoming more intelligent, they were able now to communicate, develop a language. Okay, so large frontal lobe meant that a larger brain meant that the frontal lobe, the lobe that we use to think, to process, to analyze, is developing, intelligence was developing. The development of mammary glands was a significant adaptation. This meant that the parents, the mothers, were able to now feed the young. They were able to nurture them, show more parental care, ensure that the species became more successful, that the young were looked after, and they grew up. Sexual dimorphism, the development of distinct sexual characteristics, and that was a significant development in primates to create gender so that males and females were able to identify each other and reproduction was successful. So you saw dimorphisms, the development of mammary glands, the development of external genitalia was basically orientations of the species to be able to enhance the species through reproduction. Olfactory brain center reduced. So the olfactory, if you think about our ears, guys, if we compare to that, we rely less on hearing as compared to sight and smell. So the olfactory refers to the smell center. So we rely lots on eyes and hearing. So the olfactory brain center reduced. We really don't sniff our food, although it's important for us to smell, but that reduced, but the frontal lobe increased, and your occipital lobes, your eyes, that part of the brain increased. Okay, so we're going to go for a short break, guys. We're enjoying this question. There's lots of questions on this. I'll hand you over to Looney for a short break.
Alright, yo guys, I'm so intrigued by all of this. Hey, I never took life sciences, so all that you guys is teaching, I'm like glued to the screen just like you guys. I hope you guys are taking in as much information as you can. We are going to take a very short break, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back, Mindsetters, from that very short break. I hope you guys have stretched, you've drank some water and some juice, and your brain is ready again to take in more information from you again. Just to tell you guys, our number has changed. So if you look at our likes now, we've got 44,933. So the last digit is 3. So if you had a 3, now you stand a chance to win, hey? But we never know when the likes are going to change again. So 3 might not be the one that wins, but keep on pushing, guys. Make sure you go on to mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock. Enter all your information there, and remember to choose your favorite number from 0 to 9, and you might win this nice CD from DJ Whiskey. But we don't know when the clock is going to stop, guys, so don't stop entering. Make sure, and if maybe now it changes and your number was 3, make sure you get your friends to like. About 10 friends, guys, it'll go back to 3. Just make sure you keep on entering. You can stand yourself a chance to win this amazing CD. So you can, let's do
Thanks,
it again.
Looney. So guys, awesome CDs up for grabs. So let's get those likes in. Let's move on. Which organism is most suited to the most similar to the chimpanzee? So if we go back to which organism is most similar to the chimpanzee. So if we look at the chimpanzee, which one of these are most similar? So if you look at this line, so chimpanzees are there, and from that we've got humans. So if we look at the next similarity, so chimpanzees are quite different from gibbons and rhesus monkeys, but if you look at that process, that line there as we're going ahead, it's the humans that are most similar. So the answer to that question would be, okay, let's try this out again. Okay, so it'll be humans, as I said, humans. Okay, so humans, if you look at that cladogram, are quite similar to the chimpanzees. You can clearly see that they share the closest relatives to humans would be chimpanzees. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Name any 2 structural characteristics of the skull that make organisms named in question 3, humans, different from chimpanzees. So if we basically want to know what are the structural differences between chimpanzees and humans. And this is quite a common question. It might be asked in different ways. They could be giving you diagrams of a chimpanzee skull. They could give you a diagram of a human skull. But you should be able to look at the 2 and write down similarities or differences between them. So we're looking at 2 structural characteristics that make the organisms different, and that is important. The key word here is different. So we got to look at the differences between them. So there's a shift in the position of the foramen magnum to a forward position. Now, if you guys haven't heard the word foramen magnum before, I'll introduce the concept again. Now, at the base of the skull, guys, right at the base of the skull, so you have a little opening. It's called the foramen magnum. Now, it is that point If you turn a skull upside down, if you look at the point through which the vertebral column, the spinal cord enters and connects to the brain, that opening is called the foramen magnum. Now, if you look at me as I stand upright, you'll notice that my head sits right, so my neck is actually at the base of my head. If you compare that to an organism that walks on all four, it would mean that the skull, the vertebral column, will be exiting at the back of the head. Now, if you look at the position of that foramen magnum, just by looking at the position, so if you think about a dog, the dog lies, I'm trying not to draw a dog, but if you maybe draw some stick insects here, or animals, okay, woof, 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 okay, meow, okay,
Meow,
so if you look
and
at that
woof
dog,
at the same time.
okay, woof and meow at the same time, this is a mutant dog, okay, if you look at the position of the skull, okay, so you look at the vertebral column here, it exits the head from the back. If you compare a human, okay, don't ask me who's this, it's not me, okay, it's right at the base. Now, by the position of the foramen magnum, we can determine if an organism walked bipedally, which is upright, or was occasionally bipedal, or was on all four, just by the position of the foramen magnum. And that is what paleontologists do. They look at evidence, they look at the positions of the foramen magnum to determine if the organism walked bipedally or on two. So I'm going to take out my pieces of Van Gogh. I'm going to continue. They have a curved, gentle jaw. If we look at the jaw shape, the jaw has got this. The lower jaw has got a curved jaw. It's unlike this. It's not that. With sharp canines here. Okay. It's not that. We've got gentle, small canines, and the jaw is rounded. And that means that we're not predatory. We don't attack. We don't dig in our lower jaw and attack and kill the prey. We basically process food. So we have a lower jaw that's rounded. It's not as strong and big as the chimps. Flat face. The flat face, when I don't mean flat face in the sense we got no shape to our nose, but it is not forward slanting. It is flatter. It's called prognathus. The word I'm going to introduce is prognathus. So it simply means when you have a protruding lower jaw, and if you think about the lower jaw of some animals, it sticks out, and that's called prognathus. Think about a dog. A dog's got a long jaw, and that's called it's called prognathus, prolonged jaw. If you compare chimps and humans, humans have a flatter face, and that flatter face is an indication of the jawline receding. Okay, well-developed chin. If you look at our chins are well developed, we see a prominent chin, clearly different from chimpanzees. Not prognathus. There's the term, not prognathus. So we don't have a protruding lower jaw. So prognathus refers to the lower jaw that protrudes out. So we're not prognathus. The forehead is less sloping. So we don't have a forehead that's, so our foreheads are not like that. Okay. Ooh. I didn't meant to draw a witch, but it's not forward facing. Okay, you can see Looney is having a good laugh at me.
But art is not your strong point, hey?
Okay, so here, art is not my strong point. If I told you that I was an artist, you'd never believe me. Okay, so that's the forward facing. So if you look at the forward facing here, it's less sloping. So if you compare a chimp to a human, you find that humans have a more flatter forehead as compared to chimps having a more forward facing forehead. No pronounced brow ridges. Now, I know girls would have loved to have had a prominent brow ridge, big. So if you think about our brow ridges, guys, they're not as pronounced. So we've got flatter brow ridges. If you compare that to the chimps, they've got a distinct brow ridge above the eye socket, and that's simply for protection of their eyes. Humans do not have a prominent brow ridge. Although we do have one, it's not prominent, it's not distinct. Canines, we spoke about canines, they're much smaller. Remember that we're not predatory. Spaces between the teeth are bigger. We have bigger teeth, and that's obviously for chewing, and we have a larger brain size compared to chimpanzees, and that is what gives us an advantage in terms of the evolution of brain and our society. Okay, so that answers that question. Write down the names of the organisms that display the characteristics C but do not display characteristics D and E. So we got to go back to the cladogram. Write the names of the organisms that represent characteristics C but not D and E. So basically, which organisms do not show the characteristics D and E but C? And that's quite simple. If you look at this diagram here, guys, you can clearly see that the organisms that show characteristics C would be the rhesus monkey and the gibbons, whereas they would not show characteristics similar to chimpanzees and humans, because this was something that happened after. So this gave rise to the monkeys, the rhesus monkeys, and the gibbons. And that ends the question. So I'm just going to very quickly click on the answer there for you. And so it's the rhesus monkey and the gibbons. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. Also related to Australopithecus sediba, and the common name for Australopithecus sediba is Carabo. We're going to refer to that. So the question says tabulate, and again, guys, when you find the word tabulate, there's often a mark given for the word tabulate. So this could be a 7. There's it. So you look at that 7, guys. That 7, you asked for 3 structural differences, but you got to tabulate. Tabulate the structural differences between Australopithecines, such as Australopithecus and sediba, and humans by referring to the size of the skeleton, cranium, and chin. So we're comparing the cranium, the skeleton, and the chin. Of which 2 groups? Australopithecus and Homo. So we've got to tabulate the 3 differences in those characteristics. So they made it quite simple for you. They narrowed it down to skeleton, cranium, and chin, and it's of the 2 groups. And remember, it said tabulate. So if you're not going to draw a table and you're simply going to list them, you're going to lose that mark. So here's a mark for simply drawing a table. And drawing a table means using a ruler, guys. You've got to have a ruler. You've got to have a pencil. Draw a table. Make sure that it's bordered out and that they are clear column headings, and that the rows that you write your answer in are separated out from each other. So here we've got the answers. I'm going to very quickly go to the answers. Okay, and I'm going to make it easier for us to go through this much quicker. Okay, so let's look at the differences between Australopithecus sediba and Homo sapiens. Remember, Australopithecus belongs to the genus Australopithecines, and Homo sapiens belongs to the genus Homo. Okay, so in terms of their skull, their skeleton size, so Australopithecus sediba had smaller skeleton size. If you look at Homo sapiens, they were much taller, they had a bigger skeletal structure. Sediba also had a small cranium size, indicating a less developed brain. Homo sapiens have a distinctly larger cranium, indicating a larger brain. Okay, Australopithecus sediba showed a developed chin, not as prominent as humans. Humans have a more developed, prominent chin, clearly rounded. Sediba had a forward-facing jaw, not as prominent, not as round as the Homo sapiens species. So we're going to move on to, that's the end of this question. It's quite a short question, but again, this is the common question that comes in. Australopithecus sediba is very topical. It's been recently discovered, and I say recent, in the last 3 or 4 years. It was discovered by a young boy, and you know that this is regarded as a transitional species. Now, paleontologists are calling it a transitional species. There's often lots of questions that we can ask about sediba. Why is it known as a transitional species? Why is it not Homo sapiens? Why is it not in the genus Homo? The reasons why we look at Australopithecus as a transitional species is that it shows, the word transition means change from one to the next. So it has been recently discovered. It shows lots of characteristics that are similar to the genus Australopithecus, but it also shows some characteristics that are similar to Homo. And that is the reason why it's called a transitional species. So I'm going to write this term down. It is also called a transitional species. Simply means that it shows lots of similarities between Homo, but it is more likely to be an Australopithecus because it shows lots of similarities to the genus Australopithecus. It is unlike the other Australopithecus fossils that have been found. It shows lots of similarities to Homo, and hence it's called the transitional species. Okay, so if I were you, I'll prepare lots of notes in sediba, understand the similarities it shows to Homo sapiens, and also write down the differences that it shows to Homo sapiens. Okay, so we're going to move on. I think we're going to go for a we're going to get on to some of our longer questions. We're almost due for a break, but I'm going to try and I'm not too sure whether we should go on with this.
Can I just read something quickly?
Okay.
Troy was just giving us a few bits of information here. He says laughter increases your memory and learning. Just a little interesting fact. You can tell us why it does that.
Good, guys. Laughter increases your learning and memory. Now, I know that when it comes to studying, everybody goes, oh no, we've got to study again, and then your whole mood goes down. But the thing is, guys, if you enjoy studying and if you laugh about things, now remember that you've got muscles when you laugh, and when you, as compared to when you're sad, when you laugh, your chest expands, you inhale, you exhale. Some of us are very contagious, so when somebody else laughs, we look at them and we can start laughing. And if you're not laughing and if you're not enjoying yourself, guys, it simply means that you're not taking enough of oxygen. And the more oxygen you take in, the more oxygen is going to supply those brain cells. So you need lots of oxygen. So if you cannot exercise, laugh, guys. Go and read some jokes. Look at yourself in the mirror, make some funny faces, laugh. The thing is, if you're not going to laugh, if you're not exercising, you're at least laughing, but you're increasing the oxygen supply. And think about it. It's inhaling, exhaling. I know that I can talk about yoga, and that's all about controlled breathing, and that's about regulating your breathing. So often we don't have time to exercise, or we should be. An alternative to that is to laugh. I know in countries like in India, they are laughter clubs where people randomly meet and they laugh it out, and over random things. There are different types of laugh: a crying laugh, a happy laugh, a sad laugh. So you can try those different types of laughs: an amused laugh, not so funny laugh. But yeah, fundamentally, see, I've got Looney already laughing, so she's going to get lots of oxygen into the brain cells. We're going to go for a break and try laughing during the break.
Okay, cool. Guys, we are going to take a short break. Another little fact from Troy. He says our eyes are always the same size from birth, but our nose and ears never stop growing. And I was a bit questionable about this one, but you can did verify it that it's true. So guys, we're going to take a short break, so do stay tuned. Welcome back, Mindsetters. So we've been pushing our Stop the Clock competition throughout our live shows. So basically what you needed to do is go into mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock in order to enter. So we asked you what your favorite number is. You enter your favorite number from 0 to 9. And then what you do is look at the likes on our Facebook page. The last digit, if you can look at our Facebook page there, the last digit right now is 3. But now I'm going to ask you again to refresh it. After it refreshes, we're going to stop the clock. So it's going to be done for this live session. Okay, there.
There's it.
Okay, guys, as you can see, the last digit from our likes is 1. So now we have stopped the clock. It's over. It's done for this live session. The number to beat is 1. So the number now is 1. So if you entered 1, you might stand a chance to win this CD by DJ Whiskey from Soul Candy. I will announce the winner later on our show. So congratulations to anyone out there in the world who picked 1 as their favorite number. Again, back to Evolution.
Right, so congratulations to the lucky winner. We're going to find out in a little while. So we've got the last session, guys. We're going to try and get done with Evolution. There's a nice essay question that I want to get to. So I hope you guys are sticking in there. Hope you've had a good laugh. Not looked at yourself, but okay. So let's look at the question. Read the passage below and then answer the questions that follow. So we've got to read, guys. Golden rule: keep a highlighter, keep a pencil, highlight keywords as you're reading. All types of domestic dogs are capable of interbreeding. Okay, they're capable of interbreeding to produce puppies, which eventually are capable of interbreeding with any other domestic dog. And that's how dogs are. So they reproduce, and they're capable of the puppies reproducing with other puppies to produce more dogs. The first dog evolved from a population of wolves. So the first dog has evolved like other animals from a wild ancestry. It is thought that wolves that were tamer, that means they were not as vicious as other wolves, usually adopted to humans in order to scavenge food. So the not so ferocious, the tamer ones, remember that there was competition in the wild. The stronger wolves were getting food. The tamer ones, not as vicious, relied on probably scavenging around human civilization for food. And it was easy to pick off food. It was easy to live off humans. Humans threw off what they didn't, discarded the bones. These not so vicious wolves became domesticated, or they adopted to scavenging around humans near their dumps or human settlements. Although wolves looked very similar to some breeds of domestic dogs, wolves and domestic dogs cannot interbreed. And that's essentially what the formation of a species is. So if we define species, species refers to, there's four things that if we define the term species. I'll explain to you that species refers to a group of organisms that share a common ancestor. That's the first thing. They share a common ancestor. Second is that they have similar characteristics. The third is that they can interbreed. And when they do interbreed, they produce fertile offspring. So there's four things. A species refers to organisms that share a common ancestor. They have common characteristics. They interbreed and they produce fertile offspring. If they do not produce fertile offspring, it means that these two species or two different organisms do not belong to the same species. And that's exactly what this statement means. When the wolves, they look very similar. When they breed with some domestic dogs, the wolves and the dogs cannot interbreed. Or if they do interbreed, they produce offspring that are infertile. And that would mean that the dogs who share a common ancestor with wolves who have evolved from the wild wolf have now become a new species of animals which no longer can interbreed with their ancestor species. And that is why we refer to as dogs being their own species or a new species. The variation that you see within dogs, that is an example of macroevolution. However, the variation that you see within dogs, the different types of dogs, is an example of microevolution. Now those are the subtle differences: tall dogs, short dogs, curly, brown, black, yellow, green, I don't know if we do, but yeah, sometimes somebody may dye the dog's hair. But yes, that is a result of microevolution. The subtle differences within dogs, the subtle differences within human populations, race, color, hair, skin, height, are all microevolution. That's resulted in variation within the species. So let's look at the questions. Explain why, so we've got to again, explain why all breeds of domestic dogs belong to the same species. And as I said, if you look at dogs, they're capable of interbreeding. When they inbreed, they produce offspring. Those puppies are capable, when they grow up, to interbreed or breed with other dogs and produce puppies. The fact that the puppies are able to grow up and produce more pups, it means that the dogs belong to the same species. So let's gonna read the answer out for you guys. Okay. Okay, try that again. Let's go there. Okay. Okay, not working. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's try that with the next one. Describe how a population of wolves, so if we look at, we've got to describe how a population of wolves have undergone speciation to form the first population of dogs. So speciation is a term that we need to look at. And what does it mean? Speciation simply means a process that results in the formation of a new species. So if you see the word speciation, it refers to a term that describes the formation of a new species. So we've got to describe how a population of wolves have undergone speciation to form the first population of dogs. And this is a 6-mark question. Now if you think about this, wild dogs, if you think about wolves that originally were wild, some of them had to get separated out from their main population. So we're going to look at the answer for this question quickly. Okay, I'm going to click on this, and there, voila, worked on this. Okay, so let's look at what would you need to write to get 6 marks for this. So firstly, there is a variation in wolves. So if you look at wolves, show variation similar to other populations that they have variation in terms of their aggressive behavior and their feeding habitats. So some wolves, if you see this in dogs, some are very aggressive, some are not so aggressive. So amongst the wild population of wolves, some showed very aggressive behavior, the dominant males, the dominant females, and some showed feeding habits that were different. So some relied on the bits that were left over by the dominant wolves, and the others were the ones that were aggressively feeding, and they wanted the chunk of the most of the meat, okay, or the kill. A population of less aggressive or more tame wolves became scavengers. So the ones that did not get food successfully relied on scavenging. Scavenging simply means relying on the food of others, relying on leftovers left by other organisms that that were predators around human settlements and were separated from their original wild population. So some of them that preferred to go and easily scavenge your food from other settlements separated out eventually from their wild population, from their wild wolf ancestors. Each group occupied a niche undergoes natural selection. So the wild wolves occupied their place in the wild. The domesticated ones, the ones that scavenged around humans, occupied that little area. A niche would be a small area within an ecosystem. And they eventually underwent natural selection, became adapted by some random mutation to living close in association with humans. As a result of a varying environmental conditions in the wild and where humans lived, they developed differently. And that is how the dogs, who shared a common ancestor, which was the wolves, became different. They now looked genetically, they were genetically different and phenotypically. Although dogs resemble wolves so much, they also look physically very different. They're not as built as the wolves. They are smaller, their teeth structure has changed. So they look physically very different, as well as genetically they've become different. The gene flow, the reproduction between the different populations does not occur. So even if the wild dogs, even if dogs and the wolves interbreed, there's no offspring that are produced that are fertile. And hence we say that the gene flow or reproduction between does not occur. So they become now a different or new species. The difference that develops between the different populations prevent them from interbreeding, and if they were to mix, so even if they do come together, they become so different that any interbreeding does not happen or does not produce fertile offspring, such that one or both groups becomes a new species. And that is how it led to the development of a new species. And likewise, if you look at lions, the cat family, lions, tigers, leopards, cheetahs, they have followed a similar kind of evolution. The domesticated cat also distanced itself from the main wild cat population, and that's how it's become domesticated. And that is how they have domesticated cattle, goats, sheep as well, so that you now get a domesticated, tame, domesticated animal. Okay. Let's look at, describe how artificial selection led to different breeds of domesticated dogs. Now, the question here is, describe how artificial selection led to the different breeds of domesticated dogs. Now, if you think about domesticated dogs, in this, guys, if you look at our normal dogs that you find around your house, the ones that you have as pets, in this you've got different types. We've got a Jack Russell at home. People have German Shepherds. They've got Cocker Spaniels. They've got Bull Terriers. You've got a whole variety of dogs. Now, how has that variety come up? It has come up through a process called artificial selection. Now, what does artificial selection mean? Artificial selection is something that is not natural. So, if you were to choose characteristics, so if you think about, if you've got this dog and it's tall, it's big, and if you wanted to produce a pup, another dog that is big and strong and tall, you will look for a similar female or similar partner that shows those characteristics. So you now artificially selecting characteristics from the organisms that you cross, so that the desired offspring, the pup that will be produced by that cross, have the characteristics that you have decided on or have chosen. And that is what artificial selection is selecting individuals with characteristics and crossing them so that the offspring have the desired characteristic. It happens with animals, it happens with plants. Farmers will decide to cross-pollinate, and that's what Mendel did. He cross-pollinated pure breeding plants, tall with pure breeding short. That was artificial selection. And that's, you got to see the link between different chapters here. So that is artificial selection, where you select characteristics based on what you desire in the offspring. Okay, so that is how dogs have been domesticated. So I'm going to refer to this answer very quickly. So humans, guys, you can see that humans choose dogs that had the desired characteristic and they inbred them. So you choose the dogs and you inbreed them over many generations. Careful selection of desired characteristics produce different breeds of dogs. And that's the reason. The microevolution within dogs is a result of artificial selection. So the variation that you see in dogs, they call varieties of dogs or pedigrees of dogs, that is a result of artificial selection. The microevolution within dogs will not stop. As long as artificial selection continues, humans will be able to artificially introduce new types of dogs based on artificial selection. So it's quite a remarkable way of introducing characteristics in plants as well as in animals. Farmers do this as well in terms of to produce the desired type of cow that produces large amounts of milk, large amounts of meat. We do that for plants as well. Large tall plants, lots of mealy cobs on them, and that is how a farmer will decide on which two plants need to be crossed to produce the desired traits in the offspring, and that we refer to as artificial selection. Okay, let's look at question 6. Again, this was taken from February 2012, question 3.5. A group of learners from a school decided to do an investigation using scientific literature on the evidence presented by fossils to support the theory of evolution. Okay, they formulated the following hypothesis, and the hypothesis was as follows. First appearance of fossils of single cell organisms in the oldest rock, and that was so they said that the first appearance of fossils were single cell organisms in fossilized rocks, and that was the first evidence. A summary of their research from the scientific literature is shown in the table below. Here we've got the different eras, and here we've got different time scales, which shows you periods of years in millions of years. So here we're seeing this was 460 million years ago, and this is most recent, which is 65 million years ago to present, and that we refer to as the Cenozoic era. This would be the oldest, the Cryptozoic era. Here more Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and then you have your Cenozoic eras. In this column here we have the major events in the history of life on Earth, where the origin of protist, and we did this in grade 11, we saw microorganisms, protist, unicellular organisms first evolving and then becoming complex to what we have now, the Homo sapiens species. Okay, according to the results in the table above, will the learners accept or reject the hypothesis? The hypothesis reads, go back to that, the simplest organisms are found in the oldest layer of rock. So if we look at the simplest organisms here, simplest organisms would be the protist, unicellular organisms, photosynthetic bacteria. These are the simplest organisms. So these would be found right in the, so I would accept that theory. Okay, explain your answer to question 6.1. Okay, so we got to explain why we accept, and as a life science learner you should be able to support your theory with some evidence. So if you look at the table, it shows bacterial cells, guys. It shows you the bacterial cells or the organisms. They appear in the oldest rock. They're not, if you look at here, these are the oldest rock, and they date back to 4,600 million years ago. Okay, and that is why we can say that we can support that. We can also say that they appear later in the Paleozoic era. The older era is equivalent to the older rock strata, and hence we can support the theory and accept it and not reject it. Okay, let's look at the next question. Explain the implication to the evolution theory if fossils of dinosaurs from the early Prezoic Cambrian period were found. So it simply means what would have happened if we had found fossils of dinosaurs in the early pre-Cambrian period. This would have simply changed the whole idea of what evolution would have been. It would simply mean that it would indicate that the complex organisms did not evolve from simple organisms. Did not evolve. So if you've got a complex organism before a simple organism, it changes the entire theory of evolution, where organisms started from simple organisms and became complex. Now we're looking at that would have changed the whole explanation of evolution, and hence it would have thrown the theory of natural selection out. It could also mean that the first protist and dinosaurs coexisted, therefore dinosaurs did not evolve from protists. So it could mean that both existed at the same time and they co-evolved but did not share a common ancestor, and that's the inference that you can draw. Explain, the next question, explain why the invertebrates might have appeared earlier than our fossil records currently show. Remember, invertebrates, guys, are animals that don't have an exoskeleton. So we know that they don't have bone structure. They've got an exoskeleton that's maybe soft. So if you think about invertebrates that don't have a distinct backbone, they're not going to be, these organisms wouldn't have been able to easily fossilize. So we don't have, firstly, lots of evidence of them. So the evidence of fossils is very limited of invertebrates, and hence we cannot make that assumption. So if you look at this, the answers, invertebrates have soft bodies, which mean that they easily decompose, and the chances of them becoming fossilized is very little. Okay. Another explanation could be some invertebrates may have had an exoskeleton which decays easily, and as I said, does not fossilize. So the conditions for fossilization means that it needs to be ideal, it needs to have bone structure, it needs to occur within a short span of time when the conditions are most favorable, and that would have not happened in invertebrates. We could also say earlier fossils of invertebrates might have not been discovered yet. We don't know what we still have to discover. So we could unearth some fossils which might add to that theory. So we're going to go to the last question, guys, and this is the essay question. I want to get to the essay question. We have another question before that, but I think we should spend some time on the essay question. It's often a 17-mark question. We've got a few minutes left. I'm going to briefly discuss not necessarily the content for the question, but how you go about analyzing the essay question and structuring your response to that. So here's the question. It's normally the last question. Charles Darwin and Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck had different ideas to explain evolution. So we've discussed the ideas of evolution. We've got to describe how each of them would have explained evolution of the long necks of giraffes. So here we're looking at what Darwin said about how giraffes evolved long necks, and we're going to look at explain how Lamarck explained the evolution of the long necks of giraffes. And we've also got to justify whose idea is more acceptable in the science community today. So we've got to explain Darwin's theory of evolution of the giraffes, we've got to explain Lamarck's theory of the evolution of giraffes, and we've got to stand back and say, well, which of these two is most accepted today? And we know the answers for this. So we've got to spend 17 marks doing this, and you'll see that there's 3 additional marks for a synthesis, and that synthesis means you've got to have paragraphs, you've got to have a good introduction, you've got to use the correct biological term. So you've got to be clear about your explanations, you've got to be succinct when you're writing your introduction, your bundle of your body, your body of your essay, and then your conclusion. Okay, so talk about evolution and how giraffes evolved by natural selection, talk about Lamarck's theory of use and disuse, and the more you use something, it became better evolved, and then last would be say what is most acceptable now. Darwin's based on organisms adapting based on mutations. So from my side, guys, we've touched a lot on evolution. Enjoy your enjoy your holidays, prepare for your prelims. I'm going to hand you over to Looney.
Okay, guys, we have come to the end of the show. I'd just like to congratulate Oleboheng Moremi. You have won yourself a DJ Whiskey CD from Soul Candy. Congratulations to you. Up next, we have Matt Slit. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll see you then.
To evolution. I know lots of us have our belief systems about evolution, and as a life science learner, it's very important for you to understand evolution. Now, we're not expecting you to believe evolution or to change your belief systems, but it's important for you as a life science learner to understand how evolution has taken place as a possible explanation for the existence of life on Earth. We're not saying that you have to accept it. What we're saying is you have to understand it and be able to answer questions as a life science learner in grade 12. So without further ado, we're going to start with our first question, guys. And this has been taken out from the FEB exams that was written in 2012. And these are the questions that appear in the multiple choice. And this is very important. In terms of when you prepare on any topic, I would prepare the topic first, and then I will look at a few papers. So probably I'll have last year's final exam paper 1, I'll have the March exam papers, I'll have the previous exam papers. I will look at those 3 papers and I'll look at the topics that are relevant to me. So for evolution, I'll prepare on evolution, then I'll take these 3 papers and then I'll try and answer the questions that are relevant to the topic that I've studied. And essentially that's what we're doing today. We're looking at evolution, and we've taken out some questions from from the February 2012 exams as well as from February 2013, and we've put this as a revision lesson for you on evolution. So we're hoping that you have lots of questions to ask. Looney's going to stop me and tell me, well guys, these are the questions that the guys have posted, and can we answer them? And I'm hoping that you have lots of questions so that I can engage with you and help you understand some of the concepts that you might be having problems understanding. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Remember that we've got to read the question properly first. Use a highlighter, highlight keywords. Okay, so various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the correct answer and write only the letter next to the question number. So you'll find that you either have, in your exam paper, you'll have a grid or a block in which you write down your answers. Remember that you've got to follow the
page, and it will keep changing. So you eventually get to 6 after some time. If you ask at least about like 10 friends to like the page, it will go back to 6. So just try it, guys. You stand a chance to win this awesome CD from Soul Candy. It's DJ Whiskey, guys. He's a DJ from Soul Candy. So Soul Candy and Mindset are running this competition. Stand a chance to win this. So throughout the show, we'll be checking the clock, and what's happening is that we'll check our Facebook likes, and then the last digit from our likes is the lucky number. So if you've got that number, you stand a chance to win this CD. And then what we have here is a CD case. Let me just show you guys. The very last live show that we'll have will give away the CD case. It's got great compartments to put all your CDs in. So guys, enter, urge your friends to like the page so that you get your favorite number. Okay, don't forget to download all the notes for your winter school on mindset.co.za/learn/extra/winter school. You can. I think I've said too much.
Whoa.
It's just time to take the show on the road.
Thanks, Looney. All I heard was // and that means let's go forward. Okay, so cool, guys. Awesome competition. And Looney asked me before we got to the start of the show what was my favorite number, and I said 6. So I'm just hoping that you guys like the page as much. There are lots of CDs up for grabs, guys, and let's see. Ask your friends to like the page, and we're going to get that number moving. Okay, so today we're speaking about evolution, and it's part of paper 1. And guys, you're preparing for your prelims. You're using the winter school that Mindset's running to actually prepare and look at what you've done this year. And the best way to do that is to look at past year papers. Remember one thing, that the examiner is not going to ask you an exact same question that you've used. But these questions that we will discuss today and the questions that you may revise are very important, because essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at concepts, and you're going to be looking at concepts that are being tested by being asked various questions. And that's what we're essentially going to look at today. So we're going to look at evolution. And before I do start explaining, and common ancestry refers to a term where organisms share a common ancestor from which they've evolved. So if we were to look at this, the wings of a butterfly and the wings of a bird are examples of structures that have similar function but different in structure. So the answer for that would be analogous structures. So this would be the correct answer. Okay, it's very important, guys, to understand the difference between analogous and homologous structures. Let's move on to the next question. 1.1.2. Which one of the following is an acceptable explanation based on Darwin's theory of evolution? Now, before I read these options, remember that in terms of the theories of evolution, there have been 2 significant theories that we discussed in grade 12. One was Darwin's theory, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, and the other of natural selection, and the other was proposed by Lamarck, and Lamarck's theory was the theory of use and disuse. And it's very important to unpack these 2 definitions or these 2 theories before we actually start to answer these questions. And often you get the question asked either in a multiple choice, or you could be asked to explain Darwin's theory of evolution. Essentially what Darwin said was, he said 3 things, and I often tell my learners to remember it simply. He said that the environment constantly changes. He also said that organisms randomly change, and those random changes are driven by mutations. Today we know that they're mutations. When Darwin proposed this theory, he could not use the word mutations or genes because he hadn't any clue of mutations or genes. But he did mention that organisms constantly change, and that was random. It wasn't significantly in terms of to adapt to an environment. And what the third thing he mentioned was that when these changes happen, and if the change gives the organism an advantage to the environment it then, at that time. These organisms survive, and they're the fittest ones. The organisms that haven't had a change do not survive, and they eventually die out. And that is what Darwin said. Lamarck, on the other hand, spoke about organism instructions, and the instructions clearly say use only the letter. So don't rewrite the entire answer out. Okay, so the first question, the wings of a butterfly. So we talk of the wings of a butterfly and the wings of a bird are examples of. So when you look at a question like this, we look at the options: A, homologous structures; B, vestigial structures; C, analogous structures; and D, common ancestry. Now if we look at a combination of these options, they're quite similar in terms of the concepts, but we need to break down each of these concepts before we try and answer this question. In evolution, we look at structures, and we use structures to be able to make comparisons between relatedness and unrelatedness. The word homologous refers to structures that are similar, or parts that are similar in structure but different in function. So if you think about homologous structures, if we compare the wings of a bird, the wings of a bat, if we talk about the limbs, the forelimbs of horses, dogs, they essentially are similar in structure, but they're very different in function. And such parts are called homologous structures. Okay. The opposite of homologous structures, if we were to call that, would be analogous structures. These are structures that are similar in function, or parts that are similar in function, but unrelated in structure. So the wings of a bird, the wings of a butterfly. Insects don't have bones. Birds have a structure which is made up of bones. So very unrelated structures, but they have a similar function, and we call those structures analogous structures. So structures that have been adapted to suit an environment would be analogous structures. They have an uncommon origin, so they're not related, but yet they have a similar function. And obviously vestigial structures, guys, would be structures that have lost their function or their use over long periods of time. And this is also an indication of change, where organisms have adapted to their conditions but have lost the use of certain structures. So if we think about the appendix, the wisdom teeth, the hair in human body, these are vestigial structures which we've lost function, use of.
What's up, Mindsetters? Welcome to your second session for the day, your second live session, because we've been having more revision and stuff. Winter school it is. I am Lunia, and with me is Yugan. Yugan, how are you doing?
Good, and yourself, Luni? How are
I'm
you doing?
good, thanks. What are we doing?
Well, we're looking at evolution today.
Okay.
And the grade 12s are preparing for their prelims. This is one of the topics that they often have lots of questions. So we're hoping that I'm going to help them today and we get lots of questions from them.
Okay, cool. As you heard at grade 12s, we're going through evolution. But before I say anything else, as Mindset, we'd like to send our thoughts and prayers to Tatu Mandela and his family, his entire family. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to you. We wish nothing but the best for your health, and we're crossing our fingers. We hope everything goes well, and we're sending our love to you. So Mindsetters, we do have a Facebook page where you can connect with us, ask questions, as you can said. It's facebook.com/learnextra. Our Twitter page is @learnextra. We have an exciting thing going on. We have a competition called Stop the Clock. So basically what happens is that you go onto mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock, and you do the following. You enter your favorite number from 0 to 9, and then what happens is that Yugan will show you quickly. You see on our Facebook page, you can just show them there, our likes. You see our likes on our Facebook page. It's written 44,916. Just go up. There's the likes there.
Sure.
Yes. So you see the last number is 6, right? So we'll look at the last number. So the clock has stopped at 6 right now. So the lucky number right now going on is 6. But it will change as we go throughout the show. So all you need to do is go on to mindset.co.za/learn/stop the clock, enter the entry form, fill it in, and fill in your number, your favorite number from 0 to 9. Remember, guys, if you're worried and the numbers keep going up and whatever, tell your friends to like